What does it mean to be a writer? What do you need to do to consider yourself a real writer? Here's a hint. It's not this. This isn't going to help either.
You made your choice.
The truth is simple. A real writer is a person who writes consistently and devotes themselves to learning. There are no other metrics, no other barriers to entry other than a pad of paper and a pen, or literally any computer that has a keyboard. Anyone can be a writer. Okay, well, if it's that simple, why are there all these videos, like this one, telling writers how to be better at writing? Well, the answer to that is simple too. It's because every writer's journey is unique. These videos are ideas and suggestions. They're not the law. The worst thing you can do is compare yourself to others, especially online. Success as a writer is determined by your own parameters. Nobody can tell you differently. Writing is a way of life, and to get the life of a writer, you need to adopt the lifestyle. This dedication isn't for everyone. Not everybody has the drive to train for a 10K, or to practice to be a Pro Tour Magic player, or to relocate to become a Hollywood actor. And to be a writer, you need to write. Being a writer isn't easy, but starting to write is. All you need to do is start typing. I don't claim to know everything, but I have been doing this for quite a while. Through my own experiences, I've come up with my own ideas that have helped me along my path, so maybe they'll help you pave yours.
Hey, these videos aren't sponsored, so I'd appreciate it if you checked out my publication, The Literary Fantasy Magazine. It's a biannual journal dedicated to character-driven fantasy. If you're a writer, submissions for issue 2 are open now. If you're a reader, issue 1 releases on January 31st. You can download 4 free short stories by signing up for our newsletter. Alright, that's all. Back to the video.
A writer is not just a person who writes down words. Most people do that every single day. There's more to it than that. A writer is a person who records their observations about the world and people around them, channeled through their imagination. Writers don't just write about their surroundings. They write about how those things manifest to them personally. This is why different writing from different writers reads differently. We all have our own voice, our background and perspective that makes our work unique. Just pick up a book of Emily Dickinson's poems and compare that to a book of Edgar Allan Poe's. You'll know what I mean immediately. Writing has been practiced throughout history. The first recorded language was cuneiform in Mesopotamia, modern-day Iraq, around 3200 BC. By becoming a writer, you're joining an ancient tradition that has shaped the world as we know it. We're rubbing shoulders with the like of Homer and Ovid, Hemingway and Cather, all the way to Le Guin and Jemison. We take literacy and writing for granted these days. It wasn't long ago when education was barred off from people of lower economic status or marginalized populations. Now, we live in an era where most people can self-publish a book to potentially millions of readers. This was simply unheard of just 20 years ago. At the same time, it's harder than ever to stand out. To be frank, those of us who make a living writing are the minority. Most writers, myself included, have a full-time job and write when we can. Because of this, it's so important to differentiate yourself from the crowd by taking pride and ownership over your craft. Saying that somebody is a real writer carries some weight with it. Ultimately, I think it's a harmful phrase with a basis in vanity and envy. It creates a hierarchy where there shouldn't be any. Like I said, the only barrier to entry to being a real writer is to write consistently and devote yourself to learning. That's it. Despite the simplicity of this statement, many of us feel imposter syndrome, a feeling that we aren't as competent or intelligent as others might think, and that soon enough people will discover the truth. Psychology Today reports that 70% of adults will experience this feeling at some point in their professional lives. People often like to rate authors on a binary scale between terrible and prolific, based on the author's skill. This is a problematic metric, because writing is art, and art is subjective. I believe that Steven Erikson wrote the greatest fantasy series of all time. There are other people who think that his books drag and are needlessly confusing. Really, I think the metric is more of a switch between real and not real, based on whether you actually spend time writing and learning. Regardless of your skill level, your writing will appeal to someone. It's just a matter of writing around and finding out. At the end of the day, a person who writes a lot and is dedicated to learning is a writer. The point of this video is to teach good habits and encourage a positive mindset. With everything set in our way, it can be easy to get discouraged. I've developed a set of simple, actionable goals you can set for yourself to better hike this overgrown trail. Many people get lost along the way, so we must follow these 4 principles.
Let's rock.
In his iconic book On Writing, Stephen King urges us to be honest, to write what we genuinely believe would happen based on our personal knowledge and experiences, and whether that truth is ugly. I'd like to take it a step further. If you want to write what you want to write. Through my career, I've heard countless stories of traditionally published authors who have to write things that they don't believe in order to be marketable. The way I see it, since most of us aren't being paid to do it, we should write what makes us happy, what we want to write. By staying true to yourself and writing authentically about your perceptions of the world, the writing that follows will contain all that magic that makes you unique. Write what you know is a common phrase that gets thrown around. It's good advice, but if we take it at face value, it becomes limiting. If we were to only write what we know, fantasy, sci-fi, historical, horror, none of it would exist. How could I write a story about a nun in 14th century Rome if I've never been a nun in 14th century Rome? As a fantasy author, I might not have walked across the continent before or been in a real sword fight, but I have had adventures and dangers of my own, and I know how those things feel. I can implant that into the context of my story. I have access to all my memories, feelings, and observations, and all of those things can inform different situations in my narrative that I might not have specifically gone through myself. Although, as a writer, it is beneficial to have rich life experiences.
Come get some.
Unlike other professions, writing can be about anything. It's one of those things that sits in the background, supporting all the other good things in your life. I work in IT. I love hiking and I love playing with my dogs. The guy next to me religiously follows college football, drinks craft beer, and rides his Harley to church every Sunday. But we're both still writers. I like to tell people that everything I experience is research. Every book we write, every person we talk to, every place we go informs our writing and makes us grow as writers. Writing is a recording of our version of the world around us, so the world is our muse. If you sequester yourself in a dark office, shutting yourself away from everything until your writing is finished, your writing is likely to stagnate. Our writing changes as we change. When I began my writing degree at 22, I was in a dark place. My characters were moody and angry, and they felt justified in their feelings. Years later, now that I've healed and grown as a person, I've been open to new experiences in my life, my fiction has taken on multiple dimensions, well beyond those one-note characters of the angsty old. We should be open to new experiences. We should dedicate ourselves to growing and becoming the best version of ourselves that we can be. Our writing deserves this, but more importantly, you deserve this, and the people who love you, who surround you, deserve this. Stephen King also wrote about closing the writing door. Since reevaluating my relationship with creativity, I have never worked this way. Sure, if you're a professional writer and you have work hours, you need to set some boundaries. But if we're already living a full life and then stacking writing on top of it, don't put writing over the other priorities in your life. I'm sorry to tell you, but none of us are writing a magnum opus. And our writing is never more important than the needs of those who depend on you.
Because most of us lead busy lives with other priorities, it's incredibly important that we maintain a strong sense of...
Yeah, piece of cake.
I think it was John Dufresne who wrote something along the lines of, you need to show up for the job to keep the job. In other words, to be a writer, you need to write. Consistent writing habits will look different for everybody. Some people genuinely have hours a day to do focused deep work sessions, where other people might just have 20 minutes on their lunch break. It doesn't matter where or what you're writing, but you need to write consistently. Stephen King popularized the 2,000 a word day rule, which is great for beginners and when you're on a deadline and need to get a draft done. But this is a short-sighted goal and doesn't take into account everybody's individual situations. What's more important than word counts is developing a stable and dependable writing habit that can withstand the test of our chaotic lives. Some days you're just not going to be able to squeeze out writing time,
And this isn't a big deal if you can trust yourself to come back to it as soon as you're able to. Life happens. Things get hard. So our will must be strong to return to our craft. Daily writing is good, but realistically, commit to writing most days. When I was a guitar teacher, I always encouraged my students to take a day off from practicing. Writing is the same way. I do write most days, but I always schedule Sunday as a rest day. Sometimes I do still write on Sunday, but this is out of love rather than obligation. And despite what you've been told, it doesn't matter what you're writing. You will feel pressure to return to your novel at every free opportunity. But sometimes we just don't have the bandwidth to work on our main projects. Journaling, note-taking, writing your thoughts about books, writing letters, anything thoughtful in that way is a way to practice your writing. To maintain a consistent writing habit, you do have to make sacrifices. I lead a busy life. I work full-time, I have a part-time work study, I go to school full-time, and I live with my fiance with whom I'm trying to start a growing family with. So where in the world does writing fit into that? Well, I wake up extremely early, around 4 to 5 a.m., and I write before work. Anytime at work I have a moment of free time, I take that opportunity to jot down as much as I can. I don't really spend that much time gaming or watching TV or doing much entertainment because there's just no time for those things. The getting up early part is necessary because when I come home from work, I want to spend time with my family and actually wind down. Rest, when coupled with consistent work, is just as important as the practice and the writing. Our brains are powerful, and they can solve complex issues on their own while we're doing something else to recuperate. When we're exercising, we tear our muscles down and we have to rest, and then they rebuild and heal back stronger. It's the same way with our brains. Sometimes we get stuck when we're writing, and we just need to take a step back and let our brains do the work in the background while we rest. But none of this matters if you don't have...
Damn, I'm good.
I wholeheartedly believe the moment we stop learning is the moment we stagnate as creatives. This is true for anything and any part of our lives. We should always be dedicated to learning more from the moment we're born to the moment we die. In order to fully devote yourself to writing, you need to devote yourself to learning. This primarily means reading a lot. Read things you love. Analyze it for ideas you want to expand on and put into your own work. Read things you hate and analyze it for things to avoid at all costs. Read other writers' writing from your own level or from people behind you or ahead of you. Offer them constructive feedback. This also means letting other people read your work and offering their criticisms. When you receive criticism, accept it graciously. Regardless of how the reader received your work, they extended to you extreme respect and courtesy by reading your work and thinking about it. Don't argue with feedback, just smile and say thank you. Do you know how many stories I've sent out to people that go unread? Less and less people are reading every day, so it's an extremely rare thing to get back any feedback.
I recognize my plot is trying to accomplish a lot.
I'd be more compelled to agree if it had a plot.
Now, saying thank you doesn't mean to accept every single criticism that you get thrown your way.
And I said thank you.
Some people just aren't going to get it. But if you're getting a lot of different feedback that's pointing at the same issue, well, you might have a problem you need to address. But in those instances where one person is only bringing up one thing and you don't think it's a problem, well, as the king says, tie goes to the writer. Regardless of how much feedback you actually decide to implement into your revision, you should always pay your readers the respect of considering their words carefully. Readers, especially if they're other writers, are only offering their criticisms in an attempt to help you bring out the greatest version of your writing possible. Be gracious, say thank you, and consider it carefully, implement it if needed. I truly believe if you follow my ABCs of writing, you will be on your way to becoming a real writer. Whatever the hell that means anyway. The most important thing is that you're satisfied with your work and happy to do it more in the future. If you found this video helpful, I'd appreciate it if you liked and subscribed. I'll see you in the next one.